Welcome back, Mugshotters, to another episode of Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Gabriel, and I get to do the introduction this time.
We're very happy for him. And I'm Kathryn. And today we're diving into one of Virginia's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Well, partially solved now, as of 2024.
So, right before we get into this, state the obvious. I want to remind everyone that we're discussing real victims and real families who are still seeking answers, though they have gotten some, and we'll get into that. So we'll try to keep things engaging, respectful. I will probably have some stupid jokes, but also I'm the person who might laugh at a funeral.
This is true, guys. He and my stepmom are those people. But yes, we will remain respectful. So Gabriel, I know the answer to this. But have you ever driven along a scenic parkway at night? You know, one of those beautiful stretches of roads with no street lights and just trees on both sides?
So I definitely have, and it is incredibly eerie when you're alone, but pretty good when you're with somebody else. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh my gosh. Well, here's the thing. This eerie road that's beautiful that I'm about to describe to you, you have driven on because this is my home I'm taking you guys to. So I want everybody to imagine a 23-mile stretch of scenic road that connects three of America's most historic sites: Jamestown, Williamsburg,
Represent.
Yelp, and Yorktown in Virginia. And it's called the Colonial Parkway. And it's absolutely gorgeous during the day. It's built to look like it's from colonial times with brick bridges and no lane markers. Unfortunately, between 1986 and 1989, this beautiful road became the hunting ground for what many believe was a serial killer.
Or killers, right? That's still up for debate.
Oh, exactly. And it is, because 8 young people are dead or missing, 4 couples all within 3 years, and then it just stopped. And for decades, no one knew who was responsible. But in January 2024, just this past year, we finally got a break in at least part of this case.
And that's huge because these families have been waiting almost a whole lifetime for answers.
This is the Colonial Parkway Murders.
And I was alive then, which just makes me feel old.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
So let's start at the beginning. It's October 9th, 1986. It's a Thursday evening, and 2 young women are at a computer lab at the College of William and Mary. One is 21-year-old Rebecca Dowski, and everyone called her Becky. She's a senior majoring in business management, and she's already working as a stockbroker, which that's insane. She's super driven, clearly, loves fashion, and works 2 jobs while studying. One of them is at a daycare, and the other is at the college's English department.
And she sounds like somebody I wouldn't want my mom to meet her mom because it would make me look really bad.
It's so true. I'm still stuck on the fact that she was a stockbroker already, and I don't even understand how that works. Okay, well, with her is 27-year-old Kathleen Thomas, who goes by Kathy. So now Kathy's story is particularly interesting. She was one of the first women to graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy, the class of 1981. The second class ever to admit women. She had been a surface warfare officer, but she had recently left the Navy.
And she didn't leave for a good reason.
No, because this was the 1980s, and the Navy had a ban on gay and lesbian service members. So Kathy had actually been investigated by 9 agents regarding her sexuality. 9 guys, let that sink in. Her brother Bill later said she had a soft side, but also a real toughness to her. And after leaving the Navy, she transitioned into a successful career also as a stockbroker. And she and Becky were dating. So on that night, on October 9th, they left the computer lab around 6:30 p.m. And then they're not seen alive again. For 3 days, absolutely nothing. And then on October 12th, a jogger is running along the Colonial Parkway near the York River Overlook, and they spot a car down an embankment, a white 1981 Honda Civic, and it's been pushed off the road, barely visible from above.
Which can give you the killer's MO in that, were they hiding it? Were they trying to hide it? Were they doing a good job, or kind of just a slapdash? I'm just going to go ahead and push this down an embankment.
I mean, it's definitely questions that people had. And when authorities arrive, they find both women inside. Ugh, and the scene is brutal. Both had been strangled with rope and their throats had been cut. But Kathy's throat was slashed so savagely that she was nearly decapitated, ear to ear. Becky's wounds weren't quite as severe, which some investigators do think is significant.
So the car is one source of evidence on the killer's MO. This is definitely a big one here, because from a profiling perspective, the different levels of violence would suggest the killer knew one victim and not the other, or had a very specific anger towards only one of them.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, isn't that what we think anytime we listen to crime, like shows or podcasts? And in this particular case, forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Petler thought the same thing. She said Kathy might have been the primary target, with the killer showing much more contempt towards her. Becky might have just been, in her words, collateral damage, which I hate that expression, but it is the expression.
Which, yeah, she wouldn't be the first. But what about the scene itself? Was this a robbery? Were there, any signs of?
No sexual assault, if that's what you mean. And here's something weird. Kathy's wallet had been removed from her purse as if she was about to show her ID to somebody, but nothing was stolen. The windows were rolled up, doors closed, they'd been bound, and there was evidence of diesel fuel being poured on the car.
Okay, so they were trying to burn the car and did a piss poor job of it, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the theory. If that was the case, it didn't ignite properly, thankfully for the investigators. The rope used was described as having nautical-style knots. And I need everybody to remember that detail because it does become very important later.
So where they found the car, how the crime was committed, and these knots become three very important details.
Correct. So almost a year passes. And then on September 19th, 1987, David Knobling is 20 years old, works for his father's landscaping business, and that Saturday, he agrees to take his younger cousin and little brother on a double date to see the movie Dragnet.
Which, dear God, was a horrible movie. And again, I was alive for this. So it was great, wholesome 80s fun.
Who doesn't love 80s movies? I don't like you if you don't like 80s movies.
Well, very cocaine driven. Go watch Dragnet. You'll see.
Okay, I have not watched Dragnet and I don't do cocaine. So we'll have to talk about that later.
It's a hell of a drug.
Okay, so the other date is 14-year-old Robin Edwards. Now, Robin had been going through some tough times. Her family said she had struggled with mental health and was prone to running away. But her sister said she'd been making remarkable progress in therapy and was full of energy and not afraid of anything.
So it's notable, again, that there's that age gap between 20-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Beyond. I don't understand it, but the thing is it is unclear exactly what the nature of their relationship was. David drops Robin off at home after the movie, but she sneaks out later that night to meet him. David leaves his house around midnight, and Robin leaves hers about half an hour later.
Oh, which is starting to make what their relationship looked like a little bit more clear.
Maybe.
So what happened then?
Maybe. So David's truck, which is his prized possession, a black Ford Ranger, is found on September 21st at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge. The location is significant because it's not on the Colonial Parkway itself, but it's only about a 30-minute drive from where Kathy and Becky were killed.
So it's already very apparent that now geographically it's clustered in and around the same area.
Exactly. The truck was found with the wipers on, the radio on, and the engine still running. The driver's side window was partially rolled down and both doors were open. Inside were 2 pairs of underwear, shoes, and David's wallet. But no David and Robin.
So again, the window thing being partially down is completely textbook for a traffic stop.
Exactly. And that's exactly what investigators thought. So 3 days later, their bodies are found about a mile away in a marshy area. They'd both been shot. Robin was shot execution style in the back of the head, and David was shot twice, once in the head and once in the shoulder, almost as if he had been running away.
So it's weird because it's a completely different MO. So strangulation and knife versus gun. That's just completely different. And most serial killers like to stick to one method.
Well, that's true. And Robin Edwards had also been sexually assaulted in this case, which adds another horrific element to these crimes. And you're right about the different methods being unusual, which is why some investigators, including Detective Steve Spingola, who was brought in years later, think these might not all be the same killer. But before we get into the theories, let me tell you about the third incident. April 8th, 1988, Keith Call is 20, Cassandra Haley is 18, and both are students at Christopher Newport University. And they've been dating for about 6 weeks. Still in that, honeymoon phase of the relationship. So they go to a party at Christopher Newport, planning to head to Virginia Beach afterwards.
And they never make it.
And you guessed right. They never make it. Keith's brother Chris actually sees Keith's red Toyota Celica on the Colonial Parkway that night around 11 p.m. The car is at a pullover area less than a mile from where Kathy and Becky's bodies were found 2 years earlier.
So that's haunting that the brother saw the car. And that's super brazen for the killer, if it's the same killer, to return to almost the exact same spot.
Right, but here's where it kind of gets strange. The car was seen by multiple people that night and the next morning. Keith's dad even finds it the next day. The driver's door is opened, and both Keith and Cassandra's wallets are on the dashboard. Keith's gold watch is on the seat, and something that his family says he would have never left behind. And the keys are still in the ignition.
And they're nowhere to be found.
No, there's no bodies. Never found. Police dogs track their scent from the car down to the York River to a spot called Indian Field Creek. The dogs actually try to enter the water, and initially park rangers suggested maybe they went swimming and drowned.
Which they probably called BS on when it's April and the water is freezing.
Exactly. It's always cold in Virginia, but especially then. Plus, there's a 20-foot embankment to get down to the water at that. So the families immediately disputed this theory. Both Keith and Cassandra were reportedly both afraid of that dark, isolated parkway, and their families insist that they would have never just pulled over there voluntarily.
So the thought is that they may have staged this, and in criminal psychology, that basically means the killer is arranging the scene to tell a false story. We'll either give the killer that credit or possibly just could have been a coincidence.
Well, get this. The FBI later revealed that around the same time, a fisherman in a blue 1966 Dodge pickup had been approaching couples on the Colonial Parkway. And this does become very important later.
Like many of these details we've been going over.
Yes, so hold on to those thoughts. 5 months pass, and it's Labor Day weekend 1989. Daniel Lauer is 21 and is heading to Virginia Beach to visit his brother Clinton. With him is Clinton's girlfriend's sister, Anna Maria Phelps, who is 18, and they leave in Daniel's gold 1972 Chevy Nova.
And like a horror movie, it's another young couple in a car.
It's another young couple in the car. And on September 5th, their car is found at a rest stop on Interstate 64 in New Kent County. And here's the weird part. They were traveling east of Virginia Beach, but the car was found at a westbound rest area.
Okay, so obviously the car's moved.
It had to be. The doors were unlocked, the keys were in the ignition, Anna Maria's purse inside, again, no robbery, and there were grass and dirt stains on the underside of the car, suggesting that it had driven through woods. A feathered roach clip that Daniel kept on his rearview mirror had been moved to the driver's side.
Okay, so it's another small detail, but it definitely shows that somebody else was probably in that car.
Has to be, right? Anyway, October 19th, over a month later, hunters find their remains in a wooded area between Williamsburg and Richmond, about a mile from the rest stop. And they were skeletal by then, so cause of death couldn't be definitively determined. But investigators believe that they were likely stabbed.
And then the killings just stop.
As far as we know. Some investigators have tried to link other cases, but these 4 incidences are considered the core Colonial Parkway murders. 8 victims in 3 years, and then nothing.
And now the theories begin. Okay, so before we get into the 2024 breakthrough, let's talk about all of these theories because for over 30 years, that is all anyone had.
Yes, and there are many theories, but the most prominent theory, especially early on, was that the killer was either a law enforcement officer or someone impersonating one. Because think about it. In 3 of the 4 cases, we have evidence suggesting the victims willingly stopped or interacted with someone. While it's out and open, like they're showing ID, windows rolled down, no defensive wounds in some cases.
So it seems pretty obvious to me that this is a very likely scenario, and it's a super common tactic for serial killers, unfortunately. So Ted Bundy famously impersonated police. The authority of a badge immediately puts victims at ease, makes them compliant, gives them a little scare, so they freeze in general.
Yeah, I mean, I know myself learning to drive, young girl was always told, like, don't pull over unless you're sure. And I know that this is what it stems from. This is where I'm from.
They also teach you to listen to police officers.
Of course they do. So who's really not going to pull over? That's the sad truth. And former FBI profiler Jim Clemente pointed out exactly that pattern. He said either they thought they were pulled over by a real cop or whoever approached them was pretending to be one, or actually was one.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah. And in 2010, it gets more terrifying. News broke that a major suspect was Fred Atwell, who had been a deputy sheriff in the area during these murders.
So a freaking cop.
Yeah, well, a freaking former cop by then, but yes. And here's where it gets a little bit messy. Atwell actually first came to public attention in 2009 when he blew the whistle on something pretty huge. So 20 years after the last murder, the cases are cold. The families are understandably frustrated. And then Fred Atwell comes forward with shocking information. Nearly 80 graphic crime scene photos from the Colonial Parkway murders have been leaked and are being used by a private security firm to teach crime scene analysis.
Which just sounds like a sick joke that has to be not protocol.
I mean, I would just be infuriated if I was the family. And this is definitely a massive breach of protocol. Because these photos showed everything, how the bodies were positioned, where wounds were inflicted, details that had never been made public. And they were apparently taken from the FBI's Norfolk office and used by a retired FBI photographer who was teaching classes. Some had even been circulating among civilians for possibly years.
So completely disrespectful of the families.
Yeah.
They must have not enjoyed this at all.
And no. And let me get specific. Joyce Call, who is Keith's sister, said it was incredibly disrespectful. And these were her words. They were people and they were loved. And just to have the pictures floating around like that is very disrespectful. She didn't even find out from the FBI. A family friend is who told her.
Which in the new digital world seems like something happens more often and often. So it's this guy Atwell who exposes this scandal.
Yeah, he is. And at first, he still is seen as somewhat of a hero by the families. The scandal forces the FBI to meet with them and restart the investigation with fresh eyes, which is good. But then Atwell starts acting strange, and he gets very involved with the families. Maybe too involved.
Okay, so huge red flag.
Yeah. In 2010, a note surfaces. And this note was written by Anna Maria Phelps before her death. It mentions meeting someone at a rest stop, gives a name, and says that they'll be in a blue van. This note had somehow been overlooked for 20 years. And Atwell gets very interested in this note.
Okay, so very suspicious.
Yeah. So then Atwell himself becomes a suspect. Some investigators point out that many of the cars were found in positions suggesting a traffic stop. And criminal profiler Pat Brown said the killer wanted authority but probably didn't have it or wished he had had more. And Atwell fit that profile.
So this is actually really common, and it's like a classic case of insert himself into the investigation behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So we see this with killers who return to the crime scene, who volunteer for searches. It's like they want to be part of this thing because they're the ones who created it, and they don't want to be caught, but they also want to see how famous they're becoming.
Yeah, like think about okay, maybe not you because I watch all the things, but like at every crime scene, they're like, oh, take pictures of the people who are here watching because later we're going to go back and look and see if any of those faces might be connected. Right? Like that's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because they're usually like, oh, let me see what's going on. Because otherwise it's almost like they can't get famous because nobody who knows who they are, but they want to feel that fame, and inside it gives them a thrill.
It's gross. Well, Atwell claimed he was being targeted as revenge for exposing the photo leak, which is possible, but things do get weirder. In 2011, he's accused of running a fake raffle supposedly to raise money for the Colonial Parkway victims' families. But he pocketed at least $270 of that. And then later in that year, he's arrested in Georgia for robbing someone at gunpoint.
Okay, so he's doing a real good job of staying out of the limelight here.
Yeah.
So he goes from whistleblower to suspect to criminal, and this is not a first time a whistleblower will become a suspect or a criminal.
No, it's not. But sadly, this left the families feeling just completely betrayed because they thought he was helping them. But here's the thing. While Atwell was definitely sketchy, there still was never any concrete evidence linking him to the murders themselves.
Which, again, in life we found out that just because somebody's weird or acting weird, it doesn't actually make them guilty of anything. Just makes them weird.
True.
So let's talk about the other major theories, that these weren't all the same killer.
Exactly. Detective Steve Spingola, who the families hired in 2010, came to exactly that conclusion. He spent months reviewing everything and decided that these were unrelated crimes that just happened to cluster geographically and temporally.
Okay, now we've already gone over some pieces of evidence and why this may have been different killers. What's his reasoning?
Well, first, the wildly different MOs. Like you mentioned earlier, the strangulation and the throat slashing, and then shooting, then possibly stabbing. The first murder, Thomas and Dowski, he believed was a hate crime specifically targeting a lesbian couple, which is very plausible because the violence against Kathy was so extreme and so personal.
And ultimately, hate crimes often involve excessive violence. So they call that overkill.
Yeah. And he even connected the murder to another case. In 1996, 7 years after the Colonial Parkway murders supposedly ended, another lesbian couple was killed while camping in the Shenandoah National Park, Julie Williams and Lolly Winans. They were bound, strangled, throats cut, very similar to Thomas and Dowski.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a copycat or somebody who just really wanted to get back into the game. So that's a long cooling off period then.
It is, but he thought the other murders were all different. Nobbling and Edwards, maybe a robbery gone wrong. Call and Haley. He wasn't sure, but noted their bodies were never found, which is different from the others. And then Lauer and Phelps, possibly someone impersonating an officer.
So the problem with the multiple killer theory is that statistically, it's not something that happens. So it sounds on paper like that would make a lot of sense, that there are a lot of copycat killers out there. But when it comes down to it, it's not actually true. So having 3 or 4 different killers all targeting couples in the cars in the same general area within 3 years, that's a little fishy.
Yeah, and exactly the counter argument. Former FBI agent Maureen O'Connell pointed out that they all happened within a 30-mile radius, all on weekends or holidays, all at night, all couples in cars, and mostly near water. And that's a very specific pattern, or it's at least pretty specific. But there were other theories too. The FBI and the Virginia State Police at various points suggested it might be someone from the military. And there are several bases in this area, or even someone from the CIA.
Which I've been to Virginia, and the CIA is very near.
Yes, we have all the things there. Camp Perry is nearby, and it's also known as the farm where the CIA trains operatives. And some of the crime scenes were not far from there. So the theory was that maybe someone with that kind of training could commit these crimes and leave so little evidence.
So it's way out there.
Sure.
But I guess with the CIA, stranger than fiction is really what you got to look at.
Yeah. And then if you have no solid leads for decades, you're going to explore everything. You should. A good investigator would. But there was also the moral enforcer theory. that someone who saw themselves as punishing couples for having premarital sex, or in Thomas and Dowski's case, being in a same-sex relationship.
So obviously that would fit with the couples being targeted specifically, like this is Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, exactly. And some investigators also noted the nautical rope in the first murder, the diesel fuel, and the fact that the bodies were dumped near water. Maybe someone connected them to the maritime industry. A fisherman, someone with a boat who can move around the waterways.
Which, it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Sure is, because January 8th, 2024, which, guys, is last year, after 37 years, Virginia State Police hold a press conference that they've identified a suspect in at least 2 of the Colonial Parkway murders.
Good afternoon. My name is Corinne Geller. I'm the Public Relations Director for the Virginia State Police. Thank you to all who are joining us today and to those watching via the live stream. The press conference will consist of several speakers, and then following that, we will open the floor to questions. So we do ask our media friends to please hold off for your questions until the end. On behalf of the City of Hampton Police Division, the City of Hampton Commonwealth's Attorney Anton Bell, Isle of Wight County Commonwealth's Attorney Georgette Phillips, the Virginia State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigations Chesapeake Field Office, the FBI Norfolk Field Office, and family members of the Edwards family, Noveling family, and Howe family, we are here to announce that a suspect has been identified in 2 separate homicides that happened more than 35 years ago in the Hampton Roads region. Through forensic evidence analyzed and certified by the Virginia Department of Forensic Science, Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. has been declared the person responsible for the September 1987 double homicide in Isle of Wight County and a July 1989 homicide in the city of Hampton.
So there you heard it. Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. He was a 63-year-old commercial fisherman, but he died in December of 2017 and was never charged and never formally suspected during his lifetime.
And as we saw, how they identified him was
DNA. The Virginia Department of Forensic Science, going back through old evidence with new technology, found his DNA at 2 crime scenes. The match was actually made in June of 2023, but they didn't announce until January 2024. Specifically, they found his DNA connected to the murders of David Noveling and Robin Edwards.
which is the second murder where they were shot.
Exactly. But here's where it's really interesting. They also linked him through DNA to a completely different murder that was never considered part of the Colonial Parkway cases. And that was Teresa Lynn Spall Howell, 29, who was killed in Hampton in July of 1989. She was last seen outside of a nightclub called the Zodiac at 2:30 a.m., and her body was found strangled later that morning. And this showed a pattern. Wilmer was targeting women and sexually assaulting them. Robin Edwards had also been sexually assaulted, if you remember, which was also confirmed through the DNA evidence.
So he was active during the same time period, but he was totally killing outside of this pattern.
Yeah. But now let me tell you a little bit more about Wilmer. Locals called him Pokey. He was a small-time commercial fisherman, did clamming and oystering, owned a boat called the Denny Wade that he often lived on while docked at various marinas. He also ran a small business called Better Tree Service, and he was known to confront couples on the Colonial Parkway. So there's even a story about him approaching a couple, thinking they were 2 women. But when he realized it was a long-haired man with a woman, he just laughed and left.
Yeah, so, when sometimes people say somebody's weird, they are weird and dangerous.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go back to the maritime connection.
Yeah, but he was also known as an avid hunter and described as brash, someone who was known to confront couples. He drove a distinctive blue 1966 Dodge pickup truck.
I love how brash is describing somebody who wants to just confront couples randomly. So you mentioned the FBI was looking for the blue Dodge pickup.
Mm-hmm. And around the time Keith Call and Cassandra Haley disappeared, the FBI was looking for a fisherman in a blue 1966 Dodge pickup who had been approaching couples on the Colonial Parkway, and that was Wilmer.
So a lot of serial killers, how was he not caught then?
It blows my mind, and here's the wild part. He actually was a suspect early on. He was considered suspect number 1 at one point even. But he took an FBI polygraph test and passed it.
All right. JC, polygraphs are notoriously unreliable. How is this a thing? This is not a movie where polygraphs mean anything.
I know. And it's like advice I've been given by my cousin who's in law enforcement. If somebody asks you to take a polygraph, you just say no. Just say no. Because it can implicate you when you did nothing, or it can exonerate you when you did. So despite him being a suspect in multiple murders, his DNA was never entered into CODIS. And if you don't know what that is, that's the National DNA Database. And if it had been, who knows when he might have been identified. It wasn't until after his death in 2017 when they used his DNA for identification purposes. Because you see, his body wasn't found for about a month, that they could match it to the crime scenes.
I really wish they had found him before he died.
Yeah, because I have so many questions, and if I have so many questions, I can't imagine the family. That breaks my heart. But there is more to the Wilmer story. His older brother, William Keith Wilmer, had been a suspect in a 1985 murder. A woman named Mary Keiser Harding found floating in the Rappahannock River, which is really close to where I'm from. So this hits home. Keith's wife worked at the same bank as the victim, and Keith had been banned from that bank for sexually harassing employees and customers, including Mary. And his house and boat were searched, but nothing was found. Another man was ultimately convicted of that crime, though he was later exonerated after serving 32 years.
Well, let me guess. He probably failed the polygraph.
I don't know about that.
All right, so this seems like a real stand-up family. Obviously, violence probably ran in this family's bloodline.
I mean, potentially, and it sure seems like that. Well, Wilmer's house and boat were searched in that case, and nothing was found. And when Alan Wilmer's connection to the Colonial Parkway murder was announced in 2024, his family released a statement saying that it really was a complete and horrific shock.
Yeah, I'm sure they thought he was totally normal his whole life. So, do they know how he died?
Natural causes at his home in Lancaster County. His body wasn't found for about a month, like I said, so the exact cause couldn't be determined, but he was 63 years old.
Yeah, sounds like he had a lot of friends. So, Wilmer is confirmed for Nobbling and Edwards and for Teresa Howell. But what about the others?
See, that's the frustrating part. The Virginia State Police were very careful to say that while they can ignore the similarities between all of these cases, there's currently no forensic or physical evidence linking Wilmer to the murders of Thomas and Dowski, or to the disappearance of Cal and Haley, or to the murders of Lauer and Phelps.
So I think it's kind of like we thought in the beginning. There's probably multiple killers.
I mean, possibly. Or maybe Wilmer was responsible for all of them, but left DNA at only some scenes. Because DNA testing in the 80s wasn't what it is now, and evidence might have been contaminated, degraded, or just not collected properly.
Okay, so obviously they have different MOs. What's the explanation we give to a killer who strangles and slashes and then shoots and then maybe stabs?
Okay, I mean, I admit that's unusual, but it's not unprecedented. Some killers evolve or they experiment, and maybe the first murder was personal. If the hate crime theory is right, and the others were more opportunistic, or maybe he had an accomplice in some but not others, because the FBI did say that they're looking into whether he had accomplices.
All right, well, I don't really want to say a serial killer can evolve as if they're getting better, but there was a theory from the Virginia State Police that there was two people working together, right?
Yeah. Larry McCann from the Behavioral Science Unit, he said, yes, he thought that the level of control over the victim suggested two people, one to control and one to kill, essentially. And, so throughout all of this, the decades of no answers, photo leak scandal, the false leads, the families never gave up. I wouldn't. And they formed a group called FACTS, which stands for Families and Friends Against Crime Today. And they hired private investigators, consulted psychics, started social media campaigns.
Which psychics, polygraphs, probably about the same amount of truth to both.
Maybe.
So 37 years of fighting and they have no answer still.
Exactly. But hey, don't knock the psychic thing. It has proven successful before. Halloween next year, we're getting into that. So Bill Thomas, which is Kathy's brother, has been particularly vocal. And even after the Wilmer announcement, he says he's not satisfied. A year later, in January 2025, so we're in this year, guys, He told reporters that police had made lots of promises about next steps, but hadn't delivered much in terms of results.
Because obviously it makes them look like real stars out there on how they handled it. So ultimately, Wilmer is only linked to one of these 4 cases.
Exactly. Joyce called Canada, Keith's sister, has said her mind has changed so many times over the years about whether the murders are connected. Without her brother's body and without knowing what happened to him and Cassandra, she can't have closure.
Which has to just be the worst part of this, that they don't have any bodies to bury.
That's devastating because the families believe Keith and Cassandra were never actually on the Colonial Parkway that night. They think the car was just dumped there and that whatever happened occurred somewhere else, maybe along Route 17. But without bodies and without evidence, it really is all just speculation. And as of early 2025, the FBI says the investigation remains very active. They're specifically asking anyone who knew Alan Wilmer to come forward. They want to know about his habits, his movements, anyone he might have worked with.
So they're building a whole retrospective profile on this.
Yeah. And they know he was around during all these murders. He had the mobility with his boat. He had the tools and the knowledge to move around the waterways. He was known to confront couples, which is very odd to me. But they need more to potentially link him to the other cases.
So there's something about the note from Anna Marie Phelps, right? The one that mentioned meeting someone?
Yeah, and that's still a mystery. The name in the note actually has not been publicly released, and it's unclear if it's connected to Wilmer or someone else entirely, but I would sure love to know.
Yeah, I love the whole public, because what is it incriminating? Who's it incriminating is kind of what I want to know. And Williams and Winans murders in Shenandoah, they, of course, were the same-sex couple killed in 1996, and they think that may have had something to do with it.
Well, there is an interesting development there because in June of 2024, just months after Wilmer was announced, the FBI said they had identified Walter Leo Jackson through DNA as their killer in that case. And he was a serial rapist who died in prison in 2018. DNA showed a 2.6 trillion to 1 match. So Spingola might have been wrong about that being connected to the Thomas and Dowski murder.
You know, I kind of wish both of these people were alive when they found these things out.
Yeah.
Maybe a Whitey Bulger type ending to them in jail. Anyways, so Jackson and Wilmer both could have been targeting same-sex couples.
It's possible. We really don't know. There was no trial.
Okay, so let's talk about this from a behavioral analysis perspective. If Wilmer was responsible for all these murders, what kind of killer are we looking at?
Well, he'd be what we'd call an organized killer, mostly. The scenes were relatively clean, the bodies were moved in position, attempts to destroy evidence, and he apparently could pass a polygraph, which suggests really good emotional control.
Oh, back to the polygraph.
The good old polygraph.
Like, you look really guilty, but gosh, damn, you pass a polygraph so well.
Speak so good. I've worked for people that could probably pass a poly.
These lines were clean as hell. So there was different methodologies, and that's puzzling, right? So usually they probably have a signature, something they do every time, like a lot of the serial killers we've learned about over the years that like satisfies this psychological itch.
Yeah. And you mentioned the signature, but here's the thing. What if the signature wasn't the method of the killing, but something else, like the couples themselves or the location or the staging of the vehicles? Maybe he got off on the control, the fear, rather than the specific act of the killing.
Okay, or we're looking at what they call a mixed offender. So somebody who's organized sometimes, disorganized other times. Obviously, when you're influenced by drugs and alcohol and different opportunities and mood.
Moods probably change. Well, the fact that he killed Teresa Howell, who wasn't part of a couple, suggests that he was opportunistic. She was alone and vulnerable, leaving a club at 2:30 a.m.
Which actually makes me think he might have been responsible for more murders we just don't know about. So if we could break a pattern like that, what else did he do? Where else are we going to find his DNA?
Well, and that's exactly what the FBI is trying to figure out. They're looking at cold cases from the entire region during that time period and beyond.
Okay, so where does this leave us? What are the big unanswered questions now?
Well, first and biggest was Wilmer, was he actually responsible for the Colonial Parkway murders or just some? And if just some, who killed the others? Are there other accomplices or other killers entirely?
So for me, one of the biggest would be where Keith Call and Cassandra Haley's bodies.
Yeah.
Where are they?
Yeah, and their families deserve to be able to bury them. I think out of all of them, that one strikes home the most. But there's also the question of motive. If Wilmer did kill them all, why? Was it about power, sexual gratification, some weird moral crusade? We have no idea because he died without ever being questioned.
Well, he's sick in the head, which is one thing. So why did this killing stop then, before the 90s hit and neon shit became a big deal?
Well, it's a great question. If it was Wilmer, he lived another 28 years. Did he stop, move, get scared after the FBI attention? Or did he keep killing and we just haven't connected those cases yet?
Which I have a very big question, and that is, why wasn't his DNA in this CODIS?
Well, because that's a huge systematic failure.
Which is why they don't want to talk about this anymore.
Well, yeah, he was a suspect in multiple murders. His DNA should have been in the system. No excuses. How many cold cases could have been solved earlier if it had been?
So let's talk about the broader impact of these murders to the area, since it does hit a little close to home.
It does hit close to home because the Colonial Parkway murders fundamentally changed how people in Virginia viewed the scenic highway. It is still beautiful. It's still historic, but the thing is, there is a shadow over it. Locals remember, and they tell their kids to be careful, and I am here to tell you that is true. They do.
Well, I would hope that it's changed how law enforcement handles these cases.
I mean, absolutely. The photo leak scandal led to major reforms in how evidence is handled and stored. The DNA testing breakthrough shows the importance of preserving evidence properly and retesting it with new technology.
And I hope that polygraph tests have taken a big hit in their legitimacy.
I don't know the statistics, but I hope so.
And the families are continually their advocacy, right?
Yeah.
And they've kept these cases open to the public eye when most things seem to have been forgotten. And truthfully, it looks like buried under the ground from law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, Bill Thomas has been particularly effective at this. He's given countless interviews, written articles. He wrote a piece in 2020 called The Family Perspective for Forensic Genomics Journal. He told the FBI directly, "We're not going away. And if you're not clear on that by this point, it's been 38 years.
Okay. Well, obviously good to hear. And there has been quite a bit of media attention, which is a great thing. So
A huge amount of attention. There have been multiple TV specials. Investigation Discovery, Oxygen Network did a 4-part series called Lover's Lane Murders in 2021. There's even a whole episode of Dark Minds about it. But just this year, 2025, it was covered on Homicide Hunter, the American Detective.
and they got books about it, right?
Yeah. I think the most comprehensive is A Special Kind of Evil, The Colonial Parkway Serial Killings by Blaine Pardoe and his daughter, Victoria Hester. And they spent about 2.5 years researching. They did 80 hours of interviews. And it came out in 2017 before Wilmer was identified. But it's still the most complete look at these cases.
So while I don't always like that there's this interest in money to be made off these crimes, I appreciate that they keep them in the public eye. Because I know online there's a lot of interest as well.
Well, I mean, yes, look at us, true crime podcasts, Reddit threads, Facebook groups. There's actually an official Facebook group with over 16,000 followers. And people are still actively discussing theories and sharing information. And I am a champion of that because you might hear, law enforcement gaff off like online sleuths, but let's be real. How many times have those forums led to discoveries that have helped law enforcement close cases?
Well, and also in this case, your family literally drives down this road. I've driven down these roads.
Yeah.
I've been in that area. So there is this, oh my God.
You wanna know.
I was young when this happened, and it's just crazy that it happened at all.
It is. And I think the more eyes on it, the better.
Okay, so lessons. What can we do? What lessons can we take from these things?
Well, first, the importance of DNA evidence.
Obviously,
and and the need to continually retest old evidence with new technology, because Wilmer was identified using techniques that did not exist when the murders happened.
And again, the dangers of relying on polygraph tests.
Yes, 100%. Because Wilmer passed one and it essentially just cleared him as a suspect for 30 years. And now we know polygraphs can be beaten, especially by certain personality types.
I just love that now we know that it can be beaten. So, like a lot of serial killings that have happened over the years, if there was more interagency cooperation, this would probably have been stopped much earlier.
Yeah, think of the Golden State Killer. Like, that was one of the biggest reasons, because people would not communicate. But in this case, it involved the FBI, the Virginia State Police, the National Park Service, and multiple local agencies. So that many cooks in the kitchen can lead to communication failures, evidence mishandling, and the photo leak is a perfect example.
And it's great to see that the role of the families are taken in keeping all these cold cases alive.
Yeah, honestly, because without the family's constant pressure, these cases might have been shelved permanently. And their advocacy led to new investigations, new testing, and eventually that breakthrough.
Okay, so, I like a good conspiracy theory.
Same.
So let's address some of these wilder theories that have gone around, because I do think that there is always some truth.
Well, there have been some doozies. So the CIA theory that we mentioned, well, some people think it was a cover-up, that one of the victims saw something that they shouldn't have near Camp Peary.
Okay, and is there evidence for that?
No, none whatsoever, but it persists online. There's also a theory that it was multiple law enforcement officers working together covering for each other.
And this is based on what?
The traffic stop scenario, of course. The fact that evidence was mishandled, the photo leak. Some people think that wasn't incompetence, but intentional sabotage. But again, there's no evidence. But when cases go unsolved this long, people start seeing the conspiracies.
Okay, and so one of my absolute favorites, because again, I'm old and I grew up during this time, was the absolute fascination with satanic panic stuff. This was all over the place. Your parents looked at you and they were like, is he joining Satan? How will I know?
Can only imagine with
they had books on that
metal.
too.
Well, surprisingly, that didn't really attach to these cases like it did to others from that era, but maybe because the victims were adults, not children, or because there were no ritualistic elements at the scenes.
Okay, so we are in late 2025. Where do these investigations stand?
Well, according to reporting from January of 2025, Bill Thomas says that there have been a lot of promises made in terms of what the next steps might be by the Virginia State Police and the FBI, but we haven't seen much in terms of results. So while the FBI says it's still very active, they're still seeking information about Wilmer.
Okay, so no new arrests, no new DNA matches, no nothing.
Well, nothing that's been announced publicly. I mean, they could be working on something behind the scenes. Thomas told the FBI directly, look, we're not going away. And if you're not clear on that by this point, it's been 38 years.
Which I love, because it seems like if they could, the law enforcement would again throw this under the rug. So the families are still pushing. They're still trying to get answers.
Exactly. And they're still conducting their own investigations, working with podcasters and journalists to keep attention on their cases. A Colonial Parkway Murders podcast was recording in Yorktown recently, even.
And as you like to point out, sometimes these podcasts do solve murders.
They do.
So what's our takeaway? Where do we end this?
I think it's that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. It took 37 years, but at least some of these families finally have answers. David Knobling and Robin Edwards' families know who killed their loved ones, even if he'll never face trial.
And, like when you're sick, sometimes you just rather know the diagnosis, even if it's a bad one, because you need closure. And for them, this wait is continuing.
Yeah, you need that to calm your mind. And, the Knobling and Edward families have said in their statement, for 36 years, our families have lived in a vacuum of the unknown. And we have lived with the fear of worrying that a person capable of deliberately killing Robin and David could attack and claim another victim. And at least they do have that relief now, if you can call it that.
So even if Wilmer isn't the one who committed all these crimes, all these murders, he does prove that cold cases can be solved.
Exactly. And who knows? Maybe someone listening knows something. I mean, the FBI is asking anyone who knew Alan Wilmer to come forward. And you can call 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov.
And I think the biggest thing here that we've learned is relationships and loyalties. Those things change over time. So if somebody was afraid to speak up in 1987, perhaps they might be ready now.
Exactly. These were young people with their whole lives ahead of them. Kathy Thomas was 27. Becky Dowski was 21. David Knobling was 20. Robin Edwards was just 14. Keith Call was 20. Cassandra Haley, 18. Daniel Lauer, 21. And Anna Maria Phelps, 18. They deserve justice, and their families deserve answers.
And they deserve to be alive. And
Yes.
the community deserves to know the truth about what happened. The family deserves the truth about what happened. And I think that beautiful stretch of road would love to provide some answers if it could.
Exactly. Because the Colonial Parkway is still there, still connecting Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown. Families still drive it. Tourists still admire the views. But for those of us who remember it, it will always be more than just a scenic route. It's a reminder that evil can lurk in the most beautiful places, and that some mysteries take decades to even begin to solve.
And the shitty thing is that some are just never going to be solved.
Yeah, but we keep trying, and the families keep fighting, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there has that one piece of information that could crack the rest of this case wide open.
So if anyone has information about the Colonial Parkway murders or about Alan Wilmer, obviously contact the FBI. Maybe not the CIA, but don't assume that your information isn't important. After 38 years, any detail could be the key.
I mean, honestly, it could. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into one of Virginia's most haunting mysteries. It's been heavy, but these stories need to be told, and these victims do need to be remembered.
And I think their families need to know that people honestly still care, and they're not just trying to find fame and fortune from telling this story.
No.
And that their loved ones are not forgotten and won't be.
And until next time, this has been Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Kathryn.
And I am Gabriel. Please stay safe out there, everyone.
And remember, if you're ever on a dark road at night and someone tries to pull you over and something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. Call 911. Drive to a well-lit public place. It is better safe than sorry.
And these cases remind us that evil is real. It is persistent, but so is science. So is the hope. And even after 37 years, if I've learned anything, is we can beat this evil together.
Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. A stolen gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Follow the breadcrumbs through the haze. Every clue's a piece in this